Well, good morning. And good morning to Joseph and Noah and their families. Welcome. Today's a special day. And today's scripture readings are special. They challenge us to make correct choices in our lives. We're advised to choose love instead of insensitivity to the feelings and needs of others. We're reminded to choose unconditional, agape-type love, the kind of love that wants the best for the other. We should choose forgiveness instead of revenge and retaliation. The first reading shows us how David made the right choice, respecting God's anointed king by forgiving his offenses, while Saul continued to make wrong choices in seeking revenge. And our responsorial psalm reminds us of the mercy and compassion of God, which we should practice in our choices. But today's gospel, it's tough. Revolutionary moral teaching about correct choices based on the necessity of our following the golden rule and our obligation to behave like the children of a loving, forgiving, merciful Father. Our relationships become truly Christian when we follow the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do to you. Jesus amplifies that golden rule as it relates to Christian love when he says, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you. And then we hear, give to all who beg. But I'll bet Jesus didn't receive a handful of letters every day asking for donations. But he did tell us to pray for those who persecute you. Have you ever thought of being a victim of road rage as persecution? Our roads and our bicycle paths can sometimes be a pretty dangerous place. I try to pray for those who drive aggressively and even for those who cut you off while driving. And here's why. About 5 years ago, I was driving back from where I grew up in Lafayette, Louisiana, on I-10. I was passing an 18-wheeler, doing a normal thing. A young man in a pickup truck came out of nowhere right behind me, blowing his horn, shaking his fist, and wanting me out of the way. So as soon as I got past the 18-wheeler, I pulled over, and he came racing by, yelling at me and giving me a one-finger wave. But I'm watching the road, and he's watching me, and we're coming to a small incline. Get to the top of the incline, and the traffic is totally stopped. The young man ran right into a Suburban, and he never had a chance. He never saw it. Luckily, the two people in the Suburban got out and walked away. He was dead. It's a reminder that, and I look at it that way whenever I see someone basically aggressively on the road like that. I try and remember that and try to pray for that person. Jesus challenges us to love our enemies. Be merciful and compassionate to everyone, as God our Father is a loving, merciful, and compassionate. And he concludes by instructing us, don't judge. Forgive. Forgive those who offend us. And sometimes this is really hard. To love one's enemies requires a counterintuitive act of the will, an act that we Christians are called to do. And much of the time, it's not really as difficult as it seems, but it does require an attitude and a commitment. The Christian virtue of love is not identified with decent, normal reciprocity, but with that divine love of which Christ himself is the revelation. A love that is gracious and unearned, which is brought about not by the goodness of the recipient, but by the goodness of the giver. Of course, there will always be people who are hostile to Christians. Being a fully fledged Christian calls on one to love all. But there's no guarantee of being loved in return. Jesus prayed for those who wanted to kill him, and they killed him anyway. Forgiveness in the gospel implies reconciliation. It involves bringing people back together and the healing of wounds without the destruction of the wrongdoer. It can take time, a lot of time, and a lot of effort. It requires that we have concern for people and by people. How many of you have ever heard of the Catholic Mobilizing Network? Anyone? Sometimes called CMN. Catholic Mobilizing Network is a national organization that mobilizes people of goodwill to value life over death, to end the use of the death penalty, to transition from punitive to restorative justice. Through education, advocacy, and prayer, based on the gospel value that every human being was created in the image and likeness of God. They don't award free passes. They don't recommend just turning people loose. But they do seek reconciliation and justice for the victim and the criminal. And it's not easy, but it is the gospel message. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. Every time we gather here at Mass, we collectively pray the Our Father, and we ask God to forgive us as we forgive others. And our challenge is to overcome that natural inclination to seek revenge. To meet that challenge, we must pray for the strength to forgive each other, because it's the right thing to do. If we could only remember how often God forgives us, just maybe that could make it a little bit easier for us to forgive others.
Please like, subscribe, or comment below.